is that? Come on! Get back in the truck! Get out of there! What is that?
Fascinating. Travis Walton joins us now, live from Phoenix. Travis, good morning to you, and thank you very much indeed for joining us. I wonder, what do you think of the film, first of all? Is it an accurate portrayal of what happened to you?
Yeah, I think to a great extent the movie really captures the emotions of what we went through back then.
Right. What do you remember of what actually happened to you? Can you remember it all very clearly?
Yeah, I can remember it all very clearly, just like it was yesterday. I can't remember everything. I was missing for 5 days and 6 hours, and I can only remember less than an hour of that time. But it's as clear to me today as it was then.
Sure. So what actually happened to you?
There were 7 of us. We were working in the mountainous, forested region of Arizona here, and we just finished a long, hard day's work in the woods, and it was starting to get dark. And we loaded our chainsaws and equipment in the back of this truck, and we're headed home. And as we were driving through the forest there, we saw this strange light coming through the trees. And at first we thought it was perhaps a forest fire, or maybe a plane had crashed and or something. But when we finally got around these trees where we could see the source of this light, we saw this object hovering near the road. And it was unmistakable. It was so close that there was just no mistaking it. It was not some hazy, glowing ball of gas. There was a definite mechanical object hovering in the sky there.
And did you actually have a close encounter with these aliens? Did you meet them?
Yeah, as soon as we got around where we could see it, one of the men yelled out, "It's a spaceship," or something like that, and somebody yelled, "Stop the truck." And as soon as the truck came to a stop, I got out and headed towards this thing, thinking that it was just going to be gone in an instant, that it would just take off and as soon as I approached, but it didn't. And the guys in the truck, the rest of the crew, were yelling at me to get away from there and get back in the truck. And as I got closer to it, it started to rise up, and the sound got louder, and that scared me even more. So I jumped down behind the end of a log there for cover, and I made up my mind to get out of there. And as soon as I raised up to go, I just felt this shock go through my body. It just made me go numb, and I blacked out. The rest of the crew said that at that instant, a powerful bolt of energy came out of the bottom of the craft and hit me in the head and the upper body, and just threw me back through the air. They said it looked like a grenade went off in front of me, and that they thought I'd been killed. So
it would be so scary, that. I mean, it would be so frightening anyway for that to happen. But I wonder, did you feel, despite all of that, the intentions of what happened to you, that the intentions of these aliens were friendly, or what did you think they were? Curious, inquisitive, what?
Well, you know, looking back on it, I don't see it as negative as I experienced it at the time, but at the time I experienced it, it was very, very traumatic for me. I came to, and I was in a tremendous amount of pain. I saw these strange creatures standing over me, and just the strangeness of the situation combined with the pain and feeling trapped, and I just panicked, and I just became hysterical. And I was hysterical pretty much the whole time until they finally put me down on a table and put a mask over my face, and I blacked out. And the next thing I knew, I was.
You know that people are skeptical, and you know that people won't believe what you say. How have you managed to cope with that and that sort of reaction?
Well, you know, it's been really difficult because, you know, people from the very start were just desperate to explain it away. The first thing right off the bat was my coworkers were accused of murdering me and making up the story to cover up for what they'd done. And then the state police came in and gave them polygraph tests, and when they passed that, then people started saying, well, maybe they just had a drug hallucination, and this was all a figment of their imagination. And it was just one accusation after another. I myself underwent medical tests that proved I was not under the influence of any drug. I taken and passed 3 separate polygraph tests. I took a battery of psychiatric examinations to, you know, which completely did away with the theory that I'd had a transitory psychosis. But, you know, what none of these theories take into consideration is how do 7 men have an identical hallucination? It just doesn't happen.
Sure. Travis, stay with us. Fascinating to talk to you, because also in the studio we have Philip Mantle, who's Director of Investigations at the British UFO Research Association. Now, you've met Travis, and you've seen the film, read the book. What do you think of his story?
Well, both Travis and I met one of his colleagues, who's also his brother-in-law, called Mike Rogers, a very sincere gentleman. I think Travis mentioned that there'd been numerous accusations aimed at both him and the rest of his colleagues, and I would have to echo what he's had to say, that none of those accusations since 1975, when the incident happened, have stuck at all. They're all complete hogwash. And at the end of the day, much like the movie, you have to make up your own mind whether you believe Travis and his colleagues and many other people like these people around the world. And I can find no reason to disbelieve the gentleman whatsoever.
Indeed, we had a lady where you're sitting who claimed that she was abducted by aliens, and no matter what you say, and people will scoff, of course they will, and people will deride what folks say, they believe it. It's true to them. They really do sincerely believe that that has happened. Have you ever experienced, perhaps, have you seen a UFO? Have you experienced in any way that sort of phenomenon?
I had a UFO sighting back in July of 1984. And I've personally interviewed many people like Travis who've had some very unusual experiences, and they themselves are convinced of the reality of the experience. And like Travis and his colleagues, we can find no suggestions that they're hallucinating or on drugs or purely making the story up for sensational reasons. Travis, much to his, I think he would agree with this, didn't want the publicity. And what you do find with people who have these experiences, they are the same. They tend to shy away from publicity, although there are 1 or 2 who are brave enough, if you like, to speak on the record, because they want to know what's happened to them, and they think it's important enough that other people should know as well. It's a very moving experience in many different ways for individual people.
Well, you have to keep an open mind, and obviously you have to keep an open mind, of course you do. And it's a huge universe. I mean, you know, you can't comprehend how big it is, and it would be very arrogant to assume that we're the only forms of life here. But do you think that if there was anything like, what I'm trying to say is, are we ready to cope with this kind of thing? Because we can't get on with one another, so what like are we going to be with beings from outer space?
Well, I don't know if we're ready to cope or not, and an interesting fact about this whole subject is that, like Travis and his colleagues, they were convinced that they'd actually met a physical craft and physical beings. But when I've spoken to some of the people in this country, they have different ideas about the nature and origin of their experience. So I've often argued that the U in UFO still stands for unidentified, and we really don't know what we're dealing with.
We don't. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
Pleasure.
Thank you. And to Travis Walton for joining us from Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you. And that film is out just now. Fire in the Sky is out at the moment. Now then.